You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
You ever hear of test driving a phone network? Well, US Cellular is letting you test drive their nationwide 5G for free. Try out US Cellular wherever you have spotty service. Your commute to work, that one spot in your house where your service dips. It's as easy as doing a little beep boop pop boop pop with your phone. That's the buttons. That's the noise they make. Anyways, test drive US Cellular's nationwide 5G coverage for free for 30 days. Just download the Try Us app. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com/try us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident analyst, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Well, we continue to rock and roll along. There's almost too much to cover, but I'm, it's like one of those things where you've been pissing and moaning all winter, and then you catch yourself when it's a little hot, complaining about the heat, and then you're like, nope, never mind. Nope, we're fine. This is fine. Everything is fine. Bring on the heat and the sunburn and the bugs. I am grateful. I will always be grateful for not winter. And that is the exact same way that I feel right now. I'm stressed only because you're in this mode of grabbing every little bit of information, and there's so much right now that it's like, I need to talk about that, but I can't because we got to move on. We will see how long all this goes. Maybe we'll grab a couple. There's so many clips coming out, so many YouTube comments and everything else. I mentioned to you I wanted to do that thing where I compare some of the things that were said compared to said now. I kind of think we're moving a little too fast and furious now that we're in it for me to set aside a undertaking like that. That doesn't mean we can't bring up some of the things being said. The bottom line, I mean, the main point of that, aside from obviously going back and shaming people, which is always fun, was really to highlight the change in tone around the Green Bay Packers and around Jordan Love, even if we feel like people are not being properly praised. I talked about that before, how, it seems as though we wish that, Jordan should be top 5 and he's barely top 10, or not even, he's 11th or whatever. We're still in a significantly better situation. If we have to spend another year showing everybody, no, we're better than that too, so that they have to bump up their rankings, then so be it. But, there is a team that is like the 27th best. There's a team that is the 28th and 29th and 30th and 31st and 32nd, and we don't know anything about that life. So anyways, today, like yesterday, I want to talk about yesterday's training camp, I suppose, today for me, as well as kind of go through some of the other news and notes that I found from around the NFL, NFC North, etc. Just very briefly, because, there's been a lot of storylines that have come up, and I just want to touch on all of those. That is the plan for today. Again, if there's more time, then we'll invest more time in doing something else. That's what we're doing. I guess we'll start with this. This has been in talks for a long time. I've mentioned this several times. I kind of mentioned that, it may take a little while for this to come around, but the NFL is moving fast and furious when it comes to expansion. And again, I am generally in favor. There is a balance between expansion and dilution. That is to say, getting bigger is great, expanding is great, but at the same time, if every step means less and less of what is, in essence, the NFL, then you don't want to go in that direction. But that's a separate conversation, I suppose. But the discussions apparently have been initiated for an 18th game. The discussions between the NFLPA, which is the NFL Players Association, and the NFL have started high-level discussions regarding the implementation of an 18-game regular season. The information was revealed to Lloyd Howell, the executive director of the NFLPA, during a meeting with the Washington Post reporters. This is where I got the article that revealed all this, and editors at the NFLPA's headquarters. Talks are currently just superficial, have not progressed to formal negotiations, but they indicate serious consideration beyond just hypothetical discussion. Some of the main points raised by Howell are the need to discuss the implications of adding an 18th game, such as economic, health, and safety matters. The 18th game obviously cannot be done, I shouldn't say obviously, but it cannot be done unilaterally by the NFL. That's why the negotiations have begun. The NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, and the majority of team owners support the idea of an 18-game season, potentially reducing preseason games to accommodate the extra regular season game. That seems to be a easy, little piece of candy that's being thrown out by the NFL. I don't know how much farther they can stretch that. I feel like it's not that big of a deal to do it one more time, to have 2 preseason games and an additional, 18th. Maybe they can even get it down 1 preseason game. I don't know. I feel like at some point teams are going to start to push back because, listen, preseason games are somewhat irrelevant. I guess that's not fair to say. Teams do appreciate it. But from the standpoint of negotiation, I don't know at what point you start to get significant pushback of, no, we really need these preseason games. I feel like you can get down to 2 before that happens. I don't know beyond that. Certainly getting it down to 0 is going to be a problem. But I think for the time being, the NFL has no problem throwing out that little piece of candy one more time. Roger Goodell has expressed this view during an interview at the NFL Draft in April and reiterated it in May, so he's talking about it a ton. Obviously, it's front of mind. Howell and the NFLPA are preparing, first of all, discussions with players in upcoming meetings, but also a proposal to have a longer ramp-up period, which, of course, we've talked about that already before. So this is all kind of part of a larger plan to expand into an 18-game season, it sounds like. Some other little minor details in here. The move to an 18-game season would need to have the support of players, obviously not unanimous, but you can't move it without players voting in agreement of it. And again, I think there is a misconception. The general idea is, well, the players would never vote for this. That's not true. I think a lot of the players who have voices are going to generally be against it. They're the ones largely going to be talking about the wear and tear. I think a lot of the other guys who are not quite big money guys are more than willing to play more, get more opportunity, and collect an extra game check. Right? Another game means more revenue. More revenues means higher pay. A lot of these guys, they're not. There's a very, very high chance they're not going to be in the NFL for very much. So the payoff of, rest versus playing, it's not even close. Compared to guys that are lugging around these $100 million contracts, the risk of injury becomes significantly more of an issue. So while it sounds like the voices, because the people at the top of the NFLPA, the larger name players, they're all saying we're against this, the players don't want this, the media is going to be reporting the players don't want this. And then every time, whenever you hear that, the NFL, the union votes in favor of it. And it's like, you bunch of, how could you do this to yourself? You did it to yourselves. This is your fault. How could you? They keep messing this. It's like, bro, it's what they want. You got to remember, you go, we've talked about this before. Go look at a team's salary cap or the, how much they're paying their players. Look at the entire list. Find the guys that are making under $3 million compared to the guys making over. And especially looking, I'm talking like on either a per year basis or just salary cap this year. Look at the guys making $10 million or more. There's probably like 3 or 4, maybe, depending on the team. There's like one guy who's getting like 30, one or two in the 20, 1 or 2 that's 11, 12, 13. Most of the vast majority of these players are not making that much and are not going to make that much. Believe it or not, they want to play and they want to make more money. Go figure. So there's more in here. Again, it's early stages. There's talk about additional compensation and share of revenue for players. I don't think that's really going to be a thing. We'll see. There does seem to be a willingness on the side of the NFLPA to treat the current CBA as a quote-unquote living document as opposed to a hard and fast, this is the way it has to be. In other words, they're open to amendments and changes to the document. So in other words, you could look at it and say, well, they're not going to get this done until after this current CBA. But if they're willing to just make changes as is, then I guess it's kind of irrelevant. Some around the NFL news. Brandon Ayuk did decide to show up to camp. As I mentioned, the more I looked through it, the more it sounded like there was kind of a nothing situation with Ayuk demanding a trade. It sounds like everything's going to get done. The fact that you're demanding a trade, saying I want out of here, but yet you're going to show up to camp. That's that. They called your bluff, bro. Tua also showed up to camp. There's a lot of people looking for contracts, some of the big ones being quarterbacks. And Tua is one of the guys that there was some talk about, is he going to show up? Is he not? Same with Jordan and everybody else. But there is no holdout for Tua. Tyreek Hill talked about it, said he's in great spirits and he doesn't want to miss his window, so he's not going to screw around. He knows he's going to get paid and is willing to risk the very small likelihood, very small possibility that he ends up getting injured or whatever. That is not the case for Hassan Reddick of the New York Jets, though. This sounds to be a pretty contentious situation with the Jets. There was a lot of news about that today. I guess the Jets are looking for a more short-term solution. Reddick is looking for a long-term extension. I know there's a general idea that, long-term is for teams, short-term is for players, but that's really not always the case. It's kind of case-by-case and situational. He can be fined $50,000 a day for missing camp, so I don't know if he will be. We know the Jets are kind of soft on this stuff, but we'll see how long or how much they're going to do and how long he's actually going to continue doing this. I guess the Jets did offer him an extension prior to trading for him, but he did not accept that. The expectation was that the negotiations would continue and Hassan Reddick would participate in spring program, but he is now officially holding out. So, listen, there's a lot of teams dealing with some stuff similar to this. I just feel like of all teams that don't need this, the Jets would be a number one. You just don't need this kind of stuff. You're on a short-term leash here. You got maybe another year, maybe two with Rodgers. You need this all to come together. You've already got the Rodgers not showing up drama, which they're trying to downplay, which I thought was hilarious, by the way. It was like the entire excuse given, from what I understand from Rodgers and from the team, is, well, he was here most of the time, so what's the big deal? It's like, imagine just walking out of work like 2.5 hours early, and your boss calls you and is like, what the heck are you doing? And you're like, bro, I've been there for 6 hours. What do you want from me? Another questionable arrival is Matt Stafford. I don't know if he officially did not show up or what the situation is, but a lot of guys like Puka Nacua and Cooper and all those guys, the veterans and everything, showed up to camp, but Stafford was not one of them. It wasn't mandatory to show up on that day, but he was not there amongst them. And that is a guy that is questionable to hold out based on the contract situation. And that's going to be a tough one, too. I've heard Jordan's going to be the toughest one to figure out, and maybe that's true, but Matt Stafford wants more money, more security, especially for Matt Stafford because he's getting much older and his injury issues have been cropping up, as with most guys that are getting older, Rodgers and Kirk Cousins and everybody else. And so they're looking for more money, but how much more do you want to give Matt Stafford? There's also now some worry about Sean McVay in that building. There was a quote. This is from a piece that Jordan Rodrigue wrote. Quote, if McVay can't run an efficient practice, I believe impatience would build. But again, because Matt Stafford participated in all spring, there is a small reason to believe this escalates until proven otherwise. There is small reason. There's limited reason to believe. But there is a chance, just like everything else. I mean, listen, and the Rams are one of the teams that have been going at this for a while now. They did get a relatively recent Super Bowl, but, every year that goes by, you got more and more discontent. Stafford wants money, he's not showing up. Whatever the case may be, this is just not the kind of stuff that you want hanging over your head. As a Packer fan, I dig it. There's also some questions about quarterbacks. I had mentioned in my rankings, it kind of depends who the quarterback is. It looks like there is an actual competition going on right now between Drake May and Jacoby Brissett in New England. It sounds like Brissett is kind of, like 55% the guy, but it is a legitimate competition. Similar thing, I mean, we kind of know the Vikings situation. The head coach did speak to that a little bit. Did say that JJ would take a couple, a little bit of first team reps, which is not surprising, but I think the plan still remains the plan. And then also, finally, as far as the quarterbacks, the Raiders are in a weird situation. I mean, you want to talk about a sickeningly awful situation. Quote, it'll be hard for Minshew to beat out O'Connell at training camp because the structure of practices favors O'Connell. So the battle should come down to the 3 preseason games, and there is no guarantee the winner will still be the starter in October or November. Man, how much it just must suck to be a Raiders fan. Just the worst. Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew. But finally, on the NFL front, Kadarius Toney apparently taking snaps at running back, which is just kind of hilarious. And as bad as he was last year, I think it's probably safe to say that you can put him in the same category as a lot of other guys. That category being, if your position gets switched, you're kind of a half a step away from getting cut. They don't like you as a wide receiver, and you are a wide receiver. Sometimes there's a position switch because this is just what you're better at. I think for the Chiefs, it's a matter of, well, we've determined you can't be a wide receiver. You do have somewhat of a running back skill set, and we don't have the strongest running back room in the entire world. So we could give it a shot, but it's not a good sign. For him, anyways. I could give a crap. Anyways, why don't we take our first break? We'll come back. We'll talk about the Green Bay Packers. We got a little bit of news and notes and whatnot, and then we'll get into the play-by-plays, the torrential downpour that was training camp day 2. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. You ever hear of test driving a phone network? Well, US Cellular is letting you test drive their nationwide 5G for free. Try out US Cellular wherever you have spotty service. Your commute to work, that one spot in your house where your service dips. It's as easy as doing a little beep boop pop boop pop with your phone. That's the buttons. That's the noise they make. Anyways, test drive US Cellular's nationwide 5G coverage for free for 30 days. Just download the Try Us app. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com/try us.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
All right, so 4 starters. First bit of news for the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers reworked offensive lineman Royce Newman's contract. Per Over the Cap, the Packers and offensive lineman Royce Newman have agreed to a rework contract as he enters the final year of his rookie deal. It says, thanks to hitting playing time thresholds, Newman has qualified for the NFL's proven performance escalator, which raised his compensation to $3.1 million in 2024. However, because the PPE is not guaranteed, it often works against the player who may be on the roster bubble and gives the team leverage to force a pay cut. In this case, Green Bay reduced Newman's base salary to a minimum of $1.25 million and converted $1 million into a per-game roster bonus. None of his 2024 compensation is guaranteed. So the bottom line, I mean, they pretty well explained it, but he got some bonuses that are unguaranteed. And the Packers basically looked at it and came to him and they're like, look, dude, we're not paying this. I'm sorry. If you want to keep this contract, you can, but you will be getting cut. And by the way, nobody's paying this for you. So that there is no team that's going to pick you up and pay you this amount of money. So I'm sorry to tell you, this is a fake contest. What happens when you have a contract that is not guaranteed and you're not a good football player? You can hit all the bonuses you want. Nobody's going to pay them. So they basically just gave him a big pay cut and said, here's your new contract and we'll see if you make the team. Best of luck. Only other interesting news of the day, Peter Bowden, the long snapper, was cut. And the reason being that the Packers wanted to make room to bring in quarterback Jacob Eason. So it's always unfortunate because Jacob Eason is a temporary fix, right? And so you look at it and say, well, that sucks. You cut Bowden just so you can bring in a guy that you know is not going to stay on the team. But 2 points to that. Number one, if you're that low on the totem pole, your odds of making the team are basically zero anyways. The Packers have basically concluded that. But also, he could come back. They could just, once they get rid of Jacob Eason, see if he's still out there. And if he's the best option available, go ahead and pull the trigger. But more than likely, it wasn't going to be a thing, and so they decided to just move in that direction. Getting into Matt LaFleur's press conference, just a couple notes that were brought up. One of which I'll just combine into a single note. Javon Bullard was at his locker the other day, was asked if he's starting to get comfortable. He said, I don't like getting comfortable because that's when you lose your job, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. Matt LaFleur said he didn't know that he said that, but that fires him up to hear him say that. So he did go on to praise him for his maturity and everything else. The only reason it's really worth bringing up, number one, is because that was, whenever you see a comment or an event that happens that every single beat reporter puts out, obviously it's something that at least they find interesting, which means you might find it interesting. But beyond that, Matt LaFleur did talk about his maturity. And again, it just kind of goes to show that this is Brian Gutekunst making sure that these are the types of guys that get brought into Green Bay. Very humble, hardworking, keep your nose to the grindstone, et cetera, et cetera. He goes on to say that Javon Bullard has shown a lot in a short time. He lined up as a starter yesterday. LaFleur said it's important he continue the same path when the pads come on. There is a little bit of a changeup, which is cool, but Bullard obviously top dog as of right now to be the safety 2 next to Xavier McKinney. He said the defensive line got the better of the offensive line yesterday. And remember, we're talking 2 days ago. LaFleur says in stating what was apparent on the field, so the reporters concurring. Matt LaFleur says Packers will kick every day. Anders Carlson and Greg Joseph will go today after James Turner went 4 of 6 yesterday. Jair is okay, just overheated yesterday, was some concern after he dropped out of practice yesterday. I didn't even know about that. That's why I didn't talk about it. I didn't see anybody mention that. But apparently he dropped out, but it was just, he's getting hot, and they just said it's not worth it to get out of here. But he's back in. Everything's fine. Matt LaFleur did go on to praise A.J. Dillon pretty effusively, profusely, whatever the thing is. He says, this is the best I've seen him, hands down. I think he would tell you the same. I think it's a testament to the work he's put in. I was joking with him the other day. You can see the abs on him. That's hard to get a big man to do. So I don't know if this is strictly physical appearance or if there's more to it than that, but I guess we'll take it as a positive. Talking about Marshawn Lloyd and his hip injury, he says, I don't think it's going to be too long, but I wouldn't anticipate today or tomorrow, meaning today for you. Finally, was asked about Elgton Jenkins playing at center. It sounds like it was mostly just cross-training and limiting Josh Myers' snaps. So a lack of personnel is what more or less pushed him out there. All right, now getting into the play-by-play from training camp. Once again, shout out to everybody on the ground that was able to give us these insights. Right out of the gate, the rain started. I think it ended about 30 minutes to the end of practice, but it was an absolute torrential downpour. Once again, Jordan Love out there in his sweats. He was out there in the pouring rain with the team, so he wasn't hiding inside or anything like that. Still not practicing, participating in any of that kind of stuff, but he is out there with the team. Right out of the gate, starting offensive line in walkthroughs, you have Walker, Jenkins, Myers, Ryan, and Tom. So we're kind of back, right? Zach Tom is back at right tackle, at least for the time being. You got Myers back at center. So we're seeing this seems to be, as of right now, this is the offensive line. Now, obviously, they're going to try to push Morgan into one of these spots. But if I think if the season started today, this would be the offensive line. Furthermore, again, we have Stokes starting cornerback opposite Jair. Now, this is going to come into play a little bit later, but I just want to add in, even yesterday, I almost made a comment about Valentine really standing out. I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to stoke the flames of like, here we go, like Valentine's an elite corner, like we should have known this, Stokes is garbage, blah, blah, blah. But after day 2, it's an uphill battle for Valentine to actually take the job away from Stokes week 1. But I would say through the first 2 days, he's done about as good a job as you could ask a guy to do, if that were the goal, to take that job away. Anyways, continuing on. One of the first things, once again, we see, this is from Ryan Wood, says, Packers safeties working on their punch in a monsoon as I record practice from the only place safe from catching pneumonia in July. But again, I even quote tweeted this and said, you get what you practice. I love that this has been a consistent thing. We want these guys to not only play aggressive, and we're going to hear a lot about that, getting chills just remembering some of the stuff that's been said about this defense. Very aggressive, very downhill and all that. But at the end of the day, again, there is an element of finish. And I think this is one of the big differences, and I think a lot of Packer fans that did not like my incessant talk about pressures are going to appreciate these defensive coaches because there is seemingly a bigger emphasis on finish, right? Pass breakups are good, picks are better, right? Being in the right place is nice. Pass breakups are good, interceptions are great. Pressures are good. Beating the guy across from you is nice. Pressures are good, sacks are great. And then even with this, you're running behind a guy. I think a lot of the guys, and this is probably consistent across the NFL, but a lot of the guys that we've had before, I don't want to say that they didn't want anybody to punch the ball out, but I think the general consensus was just bring the guy down. That's the most important thing. Don't sit here swinging when you just need to wrap up and tackle. These guys are looking at it going, no, if you got an opportunity, take an opportunity. I mean, takeaways are the most important thing a defense can do, get the ball back in the other team's hands, and we need to create opportunities. And if we can, have one extra punch every single time for these guys, eventually that's going to lead to a punch out. And if we also drill on top of that, and you can see them working through the drill, first is a punch, but after that, they chase the ball. Because, listen, this is something you got to practice too. How many times have we seen, basically every single time the ball's on the ground, you watch it and go, bro, I could never play at an NFL level. But if there's one thing I could do better than every NFL player that exists, it's jump on a freaking football. These guys, I don't know if everybody just has scoop and score mentality or if NFL footballs are extra bouncy or what the situation is. They got Super Balls out there. But the skill of chasing and ending up with the football in your hands is important. And seeing these guys, Xavier McKinney was kind of taking a little bit off. He's just kind of not really doing it. But you're seeing these other guys really just sprinting and chasing these footballs. And so the idea being game time, this actually comes into play. Whereas maybe somebody else that doesn't drill this, you happen to punch the ball out, you're not really thinking about it. Hopefully instinct kicks in for these guys where it's instinct how to punch, where to punch, whatever. But once the ball hits the ground, you're not sitting there staring. It's just instinct kicks in and you sprint and you go get that ball. If it increases the chance of a turnover by 5%, it's worth it. There's also a video, kind of random, but I loved it. A video of Jacob Monk getting the fans all hyped up. He runs down the sideline, starts pumping his hands up in the air. It's just, I like guys that endear themselves to the fan base, especially guys that are a little bit lower down the pecking order. Because, got to find some kind of positives here. And, let's be honest, we kind of need Jacob Monk to be good. We're really struggling on the interior. Oh, one other thing. I always forget what I've talked about and what I haven't. There was a really big announcement. Nothing, I don't know any real details on it, but apparently, we've been kind of speculating for a while. We know that Peyton Manning has been to Green Bay a couple times. He's been with Jordan. There was some question about whether or not he would be a part of the next quarterbacks thing or how that was all going to pan out. It sounded like that wasn't it, but it felt like it was going to be something. Well, apparently, Omaha Productions, which has put together a bunch of stuff, Peyton Manning's company, they're going to be producing a Packers documentary. Now, again, I don't know really any details on this. I don't know if this is going to be a this year thing, a next year thing, or what. But man, I'm excited about it. Obviously, you're going to have some modern things. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit of behind the scenes into today's Green Bay Packers. But man, I am beyond excited. Like I've said, the more content, the better. Even if it's the freaking Giants, which, as I said, might be the worst possible team that you could follow around in the offseason. But even that is something. You got the receivers thing, just like you had quarterbacks last year, which is interesting content to watch. But if you can get Packers content, especially historical, especially a guy like Peyton, who can probably get some real heavy hitters to sit down and talk about some of the history, get some of the behind the scenes, never before heard or told story. Man, I'm excited about that. So again, another thing we're just gonna have to kind of put in our back pocket and wait to see for more news. But that's all I got as of right now. At some point, there's going to be a Packers documentary dropping. First out of the gate, Anders Carlson, good from 33, 38, and 44. Now remember, this is in the torrential downpour. You got Herman reporting takeaways from first team period. Evan Williams, not Bullard, starting with the defense. So that was what I referenced before, Evan Williams getting his crack with the ones. Stokes still opposite Jair. Enigbare, 2 sacks, but also had a penalty for lining up offsides. Watson struggling to hold on to the ball today. I hate that, even though it's raining. It's like that's your one issue is ball control. Please don't show up this year and you can't hold on to the ball. No new injury updates, which is maybe the best news. Ryan and Morgan rotating at right guard. Jonathan Ford had a sack. He's looked better. Next up at kicking, you got Joseph. Says he was good from 33, 39, and missed from 44 wide right. So to start off, Carlson 3 for 3, Joseph 2 for 3. Couple updates from Eversol here. He says Clifford fake toss to Jacobs and hits Dontavian Wicks for a nice gain over the middle. No gloves for Wicks. This rain is nuts. 2 straight fumbled exchanges with Jacob Monk at center. Gotta love it. Good ball by Clifford to Watson over the middle, but he couldn't bring it in. Jair in tight coverage. Not making excuses, but I don't know how anyone can, I'm guessing, see in this stuff. He said, well, the S word twice, which is kind of hilarious. I don't know how anyone can S in this S. Evan Williams was getting run with the number 1 defense alongside McKinney. We already knew that. But shortly thereafter, Evan Williams picked, maybe pick 6 to start next team period, Clifford at quarterback. So I don't know why. I'm not rooting against Bullard. I'm just not. But there's something about Evan Williams that I really like, and I just want him to do really well at safety. I'm trying to parse it out in my brain where I'm even asking myself, like, do you want him to beat Bullard? And it's like, well, not really. But I don't know. I really like Evan Williams, and if he ends up being awesome, that would be awesome. Something not quite so awesome, I mean, kind of, but not really. AJJ now picks off Clifford. So this is back-to-back picks by Sean Clifford. Paul Brettel says, again, really impressed with the push up the middle from the defensive front. This is the beginning of a great series of tweets. Defense won the day for sure. Paul Brettel goes on to say, 2 good days so far from Van Ness. Don't know a ton about Van Ness. Every once in a while you get these updates and we kind of start in the middle where it's like, oh man, this guy's been good. It's like, really? I haven't heard you guys say much about him. But apparently Van Ness has looked good the last couple days. I'll tell you what, why don't we take a break here? I don't know how many more tweets are left, so we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and finish these out. Ryan Wood says, hell of a cover deep from Carrington Valentine against Romeo Doubs, breaking up a jump ball, and Valentine let Doubs hear it. Don't count out last year's 7th-round pick for a potential starting job. Again, I alluded to this earlier. I want Stokes, because of his athletic upside, and I guess this is the same for Bullard too a little bit, I want Stokes to be the guy. I want him to hit that ceiling. I want him to be amazing. But we can't fully discount out, not only was Valentine adequate at corner last year, not great, but he was fine. But he was a rookie 7th-round pick. So it's not impossible the guy shows up and is just quite a bit better than last year, which would put him from adequate into the at least good category. And if the last 2 days of camp are any indication, that may actually be the case. Now, very early, et cetera, but it's certainly promising. On top of that, if you want a highlight, what a better highlight than breaking up a deep ball against Romeo Doubs and got in his ear about it? Because, you know, I hate to say it. Actually, I don't hate to say it. One thing that's really difficult to do is win a 50-50 ball over Doubs. Like, if you're going to beat anybody in a 50-50 ball to have me go, wow, that's impressive, it's Romeo Doubs. That's his biggest asset. And then to have him chirp about it is just good because I like that in our defense. 2 deep attempts downfield from Clifford fell incomplete. 1 to Musgrave, coverage by McDuffie. 1 to Doubs by Valentine. That was the one we just talked about. Enigbare sack number 3. Been a tough start to camp for Dillard, and it only gets worse from here. Matt Schneidman says, D-line getting pressure again today. Rashawn Gary isn't even in, and he's going nuts. Just hyped up Enigbare, probably on that 3rd sack, and then stared down Andre Dillard and the offensive line group as he walked from the middle of the field all the way back to the sideline. Couldn't tell if he was still chirping. So this kind of goes to not only is the defense just dominating, and you kind of expect that. The offensive line is a little bit in shambles. You don't have your quarterback out there. But this is all great news for a defense that's, number one, supposed to be a lot more aggressive, and number two, hopefully going to be a lot better just at football. I love the violence, the aggression, and more importantly than anything, just the results. Andy Herman quote tweeted that and said, "The energy on this defense is totally different." Fun little note here, the Bears defense stopped the offense on 3 straight plays in the 2-minute drill after the offense got down to the 6-yard line. The reason I find that Bears DC Eric Washington says it's a gut check. The reason I find that funny, the only positive I saw in the day was Caleb Williams, for their offense and for Caleb, had a real big play down the sideline on a blown coverage. And then they couldn't do jack squat aside from that. It makes me happy. All right, and then we got Anders Carlson 3 for 3, now 6 for 6 on the day. Joseph also went 3 for 3 on the next 3, so he was 5 for 6 on the day. So through 2 days, you have Turner 4 of 6, Joseph 5 of 6, and Carlson 6 of 6. Great start for the guy that needs to win the competition. Brian Wood expands on that a little bit. He says, kicking with a wet football, perfect start to camp for Anders Carlson. His extra point was good. 38 left hash was good. 44 right hash was good. 41 left hash good. 45 in the middle was good. And 46 right hash was good. Then we've got Rashawn all over a Jacobs run. Rashawn is so damn violent at the point of attack. No idea how Rashid's just contained him. Rashawn and Preston force a throwaway. This defensive line has been relentless. Offensive line has been struggling. Clifford uses a hard count to get the defense to jump, but throws a duck right into the ground. I'm sure wet ball playing a factor. A.J. Dillon just showed some impressive bursts, sprinting through, opening up the middle to break off a long run. Worth monitoring when the pads get strapped. Matt LaFleur is very high on. Andy Herman corroborated that, says A.J. Dillon just had a run up the middle, and he had the most burst or acceleration I've seen from him. Great run. Wyatt forces a Clifford fumble, knocked the ball out of his hands. Get what you practice. This Packers defense is absolutely flying around. We'll see how they look when Jordan is back, though. Valentine's second pass breakup of the day. He's off to a very nice start of camp. Again, Valentine looking good. Grant DeBose with a good grab across the middle, the forgotten wide receiver. Ball was a tick behind him from Pratt, but plucked it. Don't need to worry about all that. That's fake. That's fake news. It was a great pass by Pratt. Wes Hodge says, no Pats, obviously, but Rashawn Gary has been a monster in practice. Herman says, Dillard has no shot at blocking Rashawn Gary, just a massive mismatch. Gary with another sack, and Rashawn Gary follows it up with another sack. Just unstoppable. Part of this, yes, has to do with Dillard, but I think I said this yesterday. When you have a guy that is not a good football player, what do you expect from somebody that you want to be all-pro level? How about like 3 sacks back to back to back? How about that? Is that kind of what you expect? I think so. Big B says, Andre Dillard is cooked. Get him off my team. I only repeat that to say that I think that that's not only going to be the general sentiment, but I think that that's probably going to happen sooner than later. The only reason it's really not happening is because we're really short on offensive linemen. But I think the Packers have probably resolved that this is just not going to be a thing. And granted, they brought him in here knowing he was raw and we're hoping he could develop him, but after a while you watch it and just go, okay, this is why. Like, this is just bad. Jason Wilde says, if Packers defensive end Rashawn Gary, it's so weird seeing defensive end. I see that and I'm like, it's not a defensive. Oh yeah, he is. If Packers defensive end Rashawn Gary plays the season like he has in practice, he will break the NFL single-season sack record. Schneidman says 2 straight sacks for Rashawn Gary. He's dancing on the field. And then a strap celebration from Jair after an incompletion. And then another Gary sack. That's 3 in the last 4 plays. Huber says Gary unofficially with 177 sacks today. Paul Brittle says Gary is having a day living in the backfield. Ryan Wood says Matt LaFleur noted Packers defensive line won day 1. Safe to say it's winning day 2 as well. Rashawn Gary with a sack on consecutive reps. He's just toying with. Then he says 3 sacks and 4 reps for Rashawn. Just sprinted around Andre Dillard to reach Sean Clifford. 2-point stance that time. Gary is on a heater and screaming at the quarterback each time, so he knows Man, I love Rashawn Gary so much, man. He just embodies everything that you want in a football player, every single thing. Edgerrin Cooper now flying down the middle and reaches in front of Christian Watson for a pass breakup on a short pass from Clifford. Lucas Van Ness getting some work inside on an obvious pass down with the twos. The offense can't do anything at all right now. The defense is completely and utterly dominating. 2 plays where you see Cooper's explosiveness, identifies a dump off to a running back and flies into the backfield and then breaks up a pass over the middle. That was the one that we already talked about, but you can see some Edgerrin Cooper plays getting mixed in as well. Sounds like everybody's just playing really good football right now. And it's not all just a matter of, the offense sucks. There's probably some of that, right? The offensive line is really struggling. You have quarterbacks that are not Jordan Love playing behind a terrible offensive line with receivers who can't catch in the rain. But bad offensive play can't force a linebacker to identify a play and then knife into the backfield. You know what I mean? But that was the end of it for the Green Bay Packers. Offense ended up doing push-ups. I don't think Jordan joined them, which I think is fair. I mean, you could say, hey, you're still offense, get down and do it. But, hey, that's on you. I wasn't out there. You suck, not me. There was a late tweet. This is actually from 2 days ago, but Matt Schneidman unloaded it from his draft. He says, forgot to tweet this yesterday, but here's Javon Bullard practicing field punts from the machine after practice. So something else to keep an eye on as they try to figure out what to do with all this talent. We'll see if Bullard continues to work on special teams. Couple quotes from guys at their lockers. Matt Schneidman here says, every defense wants to be aggressive up front and get sacks and tackles for a loss. Why does that mindset seem different for the Packers under Jeff Hafley? Rashawn Gary said, hand in the dirt and not dropping back. It's that simple. And again, it's obviously everybody was upset about it. And then the common retort was, well, that's how 3-4 defenses work. And it's like, okay, well, then maybe that's stupid. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it obviously has to do something to the psyche of a pass rusher when you allow him to be a pass rusher. As opposed to, well, hold on, slow down, seal the edge, hold on, we might need to drop you, hold on, you got to... Bro, just freaking... We'll worry about that on the back end. Like, we'll get the corners and the safeties and the linebackers to kind of manage some of that. You get paid $1 billion to kill quarterbacks. What in the world am I going to ask you to do all this stupid crap for? I'm not. Yes, there's going to be some edge sealing and all that, but you understand what I'm saying. You get paid a lot of money to do one thing, and that's what I want you to do. Rashawn was also asked, has he ever had 3 sacks and 4 plays before like he did today? His answer, probably. Some more leadership questions to Xavier McKinney. We kind of covered this pretty thoroughly already, but he says it's been fun going out with guys like RGKC. All these guys are leaders. They've been leaders before I got here. I'm just here to add to it. That's Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark. Oh, and I do see an update here on Matt Stafford. It says, Sean McVay said Matt Stafford has reported to camp and the team is adjusting his contract. So there you go. We'll see what that means. Maybe there is an answer at some point. We'll find out. Just getting caught up. Everything from here on, I don't know what's going on. Jordan Rodriguez says, I don't believe it's an extension, more so an adjustment. It's not all financially motivated either. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that for today. I'm currently being accused of ruining the family vacation by being at home right now. So I got to get out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. We got a lot more of this coming up, a lot more training camp practices to go. Hopefully the guys stay healthy and we start getting some more reports. And obviously, the big thing, Jordan Love hopefully gets that contract and can get out there on the field sooner than later. But appreciate you guys. Have a good day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.